So hello, everyone. This is Judith King Matheson speaking from an unknown place for me, but a very familiar one at our Matheson family Mecca campsite just outside of Kingston, Ontario, where my son and our grandchildren and his wife live. And I'm blessed today to be here taping from this campsite on sacred Mohawk land. And today we have a very powerful theme called Awakening to the Divine, or open to the divine. And I call it in the 21st century, flying by the seat of my pants, because I never know how spirit is calling me to use a wonderful thing called intuition. And so today, on behalf of Joey and Kim, I would really like to welcome you to a new water spot. It's Mohawk territory along the Rideau Canal, world famous heritage site in this beautiful, beautiful sacred land, about 2 hours from Ottawa-Gatineau, which is Algonquin sacred land, where I'm also blessed to live. And the theme today is open to the divine. And in French, it is soyez ouvert au divin. And in future calls, we'd like to be able to get the Algonquin language also honored in putting our titles on the website OWL, which is a website to help us all become inspired to work together to see that all the waterways of this beautiful earth planet are connected to each other. And so are we as divine beings, beautiful souls here experiencing life on earth at a time of great change and great challenges, but a time to meet each other in sacred space and to share conversations that we hope will speak to you, the hearts of listeners, and those others called to be in the conversations in future weeks. So right now, I'd like to introduce and thank with deep gratitude the two young people I am blessed and in deep gratitude to work with on a monthly basis in these oneness conversations. So I know that Joey and Kim are both living in the United States. Kim is living in Philadelphia and Joey out in Colorado. And we're really blessed to see that how this wonderful thing called internet is helping elders like myself to come together with young people and to feel inspired by their passion and their work to help us all get better at being well and well-being and wellness happening in our own lives. So living from passion, if you feel the spark in you that wants to connect to the website OWL, Wutaway Wellness Learning, just go to www.wutaway, O-U-T-A-O-U-A-I-S, wellnesslearning.com. And on that note, I'd love to invite Kim, who's creating these Zoom calls for us, and Joy, who's helping us put them on the website on monthly basis, to say some words now to greet you and say hello on this wonderful day in August 15th, 2022, as we inspire each other in this conversation open to the divine. So thanks for being here, everyone. And Joey, would you like to open us up this week?
Hey, everybody, welcome. Thanks so much, Judith. So today the topic is open to the divine. For me personally, it's one of those things that I think I became more open to the divine as I started to be more connected with myself and be more connected to ancient traditions of healing. My journey began with scoliosis and chronic pain in my body. And as I found yoga, meditation, massage, and many other modalities, I realized that I actually had control over that pain, was able to listen to the signals of that pain and find different, easy, accessible, free things that I could do to affect that so I didn't hurt in the same way that I used to. And through that process, gave me a lot of personal experiences, whether meeting other people or deeper connections to myself that allowed me to kind of have an open view into the divine. Whereas previous to that time, I think I went from like a family of Seventh-day Adventists, as well as Christianity on another side. And it didn't really fully resonate with me as a child. That's just kind of what I grew into. And as I became a young adult, I felt that I aligned more with atheism, and to that there was no divine, there was no purpose. And it was like science kind of thing, But then as I kind of came through this healing journey of the chronic pain and then being able to start to resolve that and actually make changes in the scoliotic curvature of the spine to lessen that, I got deeper and deeper connection with nature and with divinity, and saw that there is this connection that can't be explained with words, but it comes through this felt sense experiencing. And so it really opened up my mind to like, even if I can't explain it, I know there's some type of sense and feeling to it, and that's more than enough for me. And that's actually what guides me to do more and more and to make that deeper connection with my body, with myself, with people in my life that increase my joy, and to share that with others as well. So yeah, that's my personal experience around open to divinity, and would love to pass it off to Kim to share hers as well.
I love that, Joey. And I love how you were talking about getting into nature, because it seems like this month, at least for the three of us, is about nature. Because I went camping last week for the first time in a few years. And Judith is camping right now, coming to us from her campsite. So I think it just flows into the divine so perfectly. And what I learned, which I say this every time when I go camping, when I come home, I always say the same thing. I always say we should just live in that way all the time. I always say that because I feel so much more connected when I'm camping. In this time around, we usually only stay for like 3 to 4 days. This time around we stayed for 6 days, 5 nights. And the first day or two, it took some getting used to. I was not comfortable. I was out of my comfort zone. And so I had to kind of acclimate to the idea of, okay, we're going to sleep in a tent now. It's not going to be cozy like my bed, and there's bugs and there's spiders, and we have to cook over a fire and kind of set aside time for that. It takes like an hour to cook anything on a fire. So it's not like the microwave, which is what I'm used to, which I know is not good for us. So all of that I had to acclimate to, and I was physically kind of tired. I'm not in the best shape as I was a couple of years ago. So it was so funny. We were making fun of each other that when we climbed out of the tent, we had to do that thing where like you're like, oh, like your lower back. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're not that old. We shouldn't be doing this right now. Like we shouldn't be feeling this way. But as the days went on, I found that I felt stronger and healthier. So by day 6, I was like, I don't want to leave because I was feeling more energetic. And just walking to the bathroom was exercise because it was like across our loop that we were staying in. I found it felt really, really good to use my muscles. We did some canoeing, and I didn't want to stop. I have not worked out in a really long time. I thought for sure my arms would hurt and my triceps would hurt. It felt so good to move. So good that I ended up paddling us around the lake one more one more lap because I was like, just one more. I just want to stay out a little longer. So my point in saying all of that is that I really felt alive and connected when I just took that time to stop and to be in the experience, to be in nature, to go for that walk. We went hiking, we explored the water, we were in the elements, we cooked with the fire. Everything tastes so good over a campfire. I love it. So taking time for renewal, in my experience, that's when I feel most connected to the divine. When I take that time to get quiet and go inside, do some deep breathing. Breathing's always great. But nature, I mean, it's almost instantaneous. It's literally like once I see a trail and I start walking on it, I'm just there. I feel instantly connected. So that's me. That was my experience. And actually,
Beautiful.
before I go on, I just realized there might be some new people watching who don't know who I am. So I apologize for rambling. If you don't know me, my name is Kim. I am a music therapist, a holistic healing coach, and I specialize in helping people get back to the heart and activating the heart chakra, and reconnecting, just like I was talking about, reconnecting to the divine and your purpose. So that's me. You can check me out at holistichealingcoaching.com if you are curious about more. But yeah, so Judith, jump in because you're camping right now. I can't wait to hear about it.
Well, I must say, Joey, I really loved you always articulate how important it is to get back to connecting to your body and your feelings and the trauma we all carry. And as an elder and a grandmother, age 78, I can really associate with the healing journey as a recent widow as well. How nature, even in my own backyard in Aylmer, Quebec, how blessed I am in the process of grief.
Judith, we lost you there for a second.
She's going faster than the speed of technology. I'll fill in there until we hear her come back. Like she's muted as well. Yeah, I think you brought up an important point, Kim, about nature. That like it seems as is she coming back? Go for it, Judith.
Yep. I like your last word, nature. So when we're in nature, we definitely go with the flow. And sometimes we can lose connection to the internet and restore connection with our souls. And I love what you and Kim were talking about because it really mirrors my experience as a recent widow and how much I am in this process of grief and gratitude at some point in that grief process. To be able to be an elder, to be able to open my back door and go into nature and be present to the garden of life where the birds come to me and remind me there is another side. There is a powerful side that people cannot relate to because we're so busy being busy as human doers. And I love what you're talking about today as it relates to restoring your feelings, remembering to breathe, and Kim's story about camping. And, you know, we can get atrophied in these challenging times where we couldn't go out of our homes, we couldn't exercise, we couldn't walk. And so I'm finding that nature is the greatest healer. And the waterways of Mother Earth connect us to each other. I spoke of that in a moment ago. Water is one of the greatest healers. And being on the water, being in sync with rowing, being in sync with life, and honoring your body's greatest need to put your feet on the earth. And Joey, you reminded me that many weeks ago. Go out and sit in your yard, Judith, and get your feet on the earth. And what a powerful message for us all to get grounded. And that will be our theme next month, as a matter of fact. To get grounded and to stay centered is so important for all ages in these times, particularly when we go through any kind of change. We will have grief. Any kind of grief, we will have loss. And when we have loss, our soul is traumatized. So we have to remember to stay in our beautiful physical bodies and look after them. They are the sacred ways by which we get to walk on this planet in this very challenging times of meeting like-minded people that remind us that we are connected, we are interconnected, and we are in a good way interdependent on being fully cognizant that we're more than we're conditioned to think we are. So on that note, I'll pass it on to you folks. For myself personally, the grief process is so much important for me to be in nature, be it my backyard or this sacred Mecca of Matheson's sacred space over these years, where we've grown up with our children and our grandchildren and as a family. And I would just add, family is really important. Stay connected with your families. So, Joey, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'm really excited that your family has that ancestral connection to the land. That's very special. I don't know if a lot of people have that. So it's really beautiful. I'm glad that your family has that. And I think that's important to have that timeline of generations that have been in the same place and enjoyed the same piece of land and nature. And that's where I kind of like wonder, it's like we say like the topic is open to divinity. And we're talking about divinity, and at the same time we're talking about nature. And it's like, I think part of divinity is almost this unknown, this level of like uncertainty, and unexplainable. We try our best, like pointing at the moon, but we're all kind of seeing different aspects of what divinity is. And that's the same for me, that like nature is part of that divinity. Ancestral healing techniques for me is also part of that divinity. And like what Kim was talking about of being out in nature, and like choosing to make things difficult compared to what our very easy modern life is, of we can throw something in the microwave and it's done in a few seconds, and be able to not be hungry anymore, versus the effort it takes to start a campfire and choose foods to do it. It could be the like most nasty food that you wouldn't eat normally at home with the ease of what we have for the modern life. But when you do it on the campfire, like it just changes everything, the entire environment. Like the worst food can actually taste the best, because it takes so much effort to put in the work to make that food happen. And I think that itself almost makes it more delicious. But then the environment also of being around in nature, of that uncertainty, like, bugs come through and birds fly by and snakes and little things can happen at any moment. You could see anything, or experience new smells through flowers. Like it's a very sensory based, grounded to earth connection. And for me, that is the divine. And I kind of see that in my own way, like having a garden. I've had a garden, I just realized, for more than 7 years now, in my backyard, that's been built over time. And like, there's so many, I call them rogue plants, these plants that just come up. Usually it's squash. Pumpkins are very prolific. I have a nettle plant that I probably should not have put in the garden, because now it grows kind of like peppermint, where the root structure grows under the ground, so it just spreads like crazy. So I'm constantly always in there cutting nettle, and I have more abundance than I can use for it. But that same thing, just sitting out in the garden, you never know what's going to pop up next. Some basil plants came out of nowhere. Some lettuces came out of nowhere from previous years. Letting things flower, and then you've got seeds from these things, and cut those and do stuff, and the pollinators that are always coming around. So like, it's this entire ecosystem that could be there if I were to take the time to sit in the garden and just sit there and watch it. And I think that is really the beauty of life sometimes, is just slowing down and choosing to connect to nature, whatever that is. And like, Kim, back to what you were saying about like the wanting to just spend more time canoeing. Like in one side it's an exercise, and on the other side it just feels like a flow, like a joy of life. Like, oh, I actually just want to keep doing this. Like there's something about it that just feels so good, and I just want to keep doing it. And that ease of life, I believe, is really that piece, because fish could pop up, dragonflies could fly by. Like you never know what's going to happen. I think that beauty of not knowing is really what I think we all are hungry for, to have that connection to nature and the divine, and to not know. As much as we kind of culturally believe that knowing is safety, sometimes unknowing and uncertainty is actually the key to life sometimes. So yeah, absolutely. As always, love this conversation. For those who have joined, I put a link in the chat box to go to our YouTube channel if you want to watch any of the previous recordings, and then feel free to join us each month as well.
That's wonderful, Joey, because it's literally what we're talking about for people listening in, is learning to go with the flow, to be in the flow of life. And when we can begin to have stronger relationship with nature, we begin to discover that we're all connected and we're all one. And part of our conversations are about experiencing oneness. And oneness is being in the flow of life, so that when we go out on an evening around a campfire to share with each other, we restore the connection of being fully human. We can think, we can feel, we're human. And we need to have these significant conversations with our families. And where is the best time? In a canoe, rowing with another beautiful soul, sitting around a campfire, having heart-to-heart conversations of just relaxing, laughing, and having fun. So they say that in my backyard and in your backyard, Joey, nature has given us a lot of medicine we've forgotten about. And nature and the birds come to me and they listen when we're in conversation, and they sit and they observe and listen. They want to be part of the energy of human beings discovering how beautiful we are. And we are beautiful beings. So it's time in this era to remember, as a spiritual director, I listen to people's pains so they can begin to see what beautiful souls they are. Beyond the pain and the trauma is their soul yearning for them to express what is their highest vision, to be the person they're called to be, to use their unique talents and gifts to make the world a better place for themselves and affect those around them in a ripple effect, because everything is energy, just like water. You throw a stone on the water like a child. What does a child do? Remember how to play. The squirrels in my backyard remember how to play. They're always busy. And what I would say is, in these times, I think it's really important to lighten up, go camping, go for a walk in nature, hug a tree, and have fun and laugh, because there's nothing more powerful than the medicine of laughter. Despite the pain and the tears, when you can begin to laugh as a recent widow, you know you've turned the corner to begin to live from grace and gratitude. So I would offer that little piece of a gem from my own personal experience. Being a widow has never taken me more deeper in my life, and it's actually become a blessing, where we know that our ancestors on the other side, they're honoring us and cheering us on, because these are the times to remember, as one universal human family, we are wonderful souls and there's goodness in all of us. So it's time to listen and explore the beauty in all our hearts, and what better place than nature. So Kim, keep adding to the story of your recent nature trip in a tent. And it's a beautiful story of learning how to get out of a tent and remembering your body hasn't done that for a while or ever. So Kim, tell us some more.
I love that. Yeah, like I said, I think it was just it was natural, like natural body movements, you know, squatting when you're at the fire because you're trying to put all the wood in and position everything just right to keep it going. So squatting was happened a lot. And there were times when I had to like get myself back up and just stretch my legs and my back and like, oh, I need a minute, you know, before I went back down. And the same thing with the tent. We did a lot of picking up branches, because in this particular site, which I loved, we were allowed to burn any tree branches that were nearby on the ground. You know, like we could burn wood from, I think, up to 50 miles away, a 50-mile radius, which we had not experienced at other sites before. So I was super excited when my daughter joined us. It was just my wife and I the first like 3 days, which was so nice. So nice to be like quiet, alone in the woods, you know. And then the fourth and fifth day, or fourth and fifth night, my daughter joined us from her grandpa's house because she had been away. And she absolutely loved it. We sent her to go find firewood. She's almost 5. So she was just running up and down the woods, rolling in the dirt. I mean, just being a kid. It was so natural for her to do that. And it really, Joey, when you were talking about like the mystery of nature and the mystery of the divine, it reminded me of this experience that it is mysterious. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to pop up. Like we found little frogs and little animals and things that were super interesting, you know, like, hey, look at the frog, look at that, you know, all these things happening. We found a beaver dam, and then we were looking to find the lodge that they lived in, and all this stuff. But what I discovered was, even though we weren't sure what was going to happen and what we were going to see, everything we needed was provided. Like nature provides. Like it didn't matter what the situation was. We knew, we had this sense that we were just really well taken care of, which is a sense that we get from the divine, right? From nature and source. And we went hiking one day, And we had no idea, like there was no trail on the map or anything. We didn't even know where to go. We stopped to get some more ice for our cooler at a nearby little grocery store, and we were talking about like, I feel like hiking, but where, like, we didn't know where there were any trails. And a lady heard us talking, and she was like, well, just turn down this road that's right around the corner here and go up the mountain. There's a mountain there, you can hike up the mountain. We're like, okay. So we just drove until we felt like stopping. there was a few points we could have stopped, but we kept going. We went down a dirt road. We saw like buses carrying people who were tubing along the river. Didn't do that, but maybe another time. And that was where we discovered so much. We discovered like an old glacier. Beautiful, beautiful sight, just all these flat rocks and smooth. And there was a little tiny stream flowing like in the middle of it, but you could tell that it had at one point taken up the whole space, which was just yards wide. So we're walking up this glacier and following the little stream to see where it was coming from. And then we got off of it because it was steep and, rocky or whatever. And I remember my wife commented when we found a trail that paralleled this little stream or river, whatever you want to call it. And she was like, look, there's nature made steps, because there was literally like steps made from tree trunks or tree roots. And she was like, there's steps for us. So there was, again, this feeling of, okay, nature is providing all of these things. And even at our site where we had the actual tent where we were staying, our site had the most tree roots popping up everywhere out of all the other sites on the campground, which at first we thought was kind of annoying. We're like, it's so bumpy, we're going to trip here. But we found when we were sitting around the campfire, I was using it as a leg rest, putting my feet up because my legs were kind of cutting into my chair a little bit. I was like, oh, I'm liking these roots. It's like nature knew that I was going to need something to kind of hold my feet up to take the weight of my legs, take it off the chair. So there was just everything. Everything was provided. Everything that we didn't even think that we would need, we found was available to us, from exploration, from adventure, from little things like roots that hold our feet up. It was all there. And all we had to do was take the time to notice it, which is so powerful with the divine as well. Yeah.
And thank you for mentioning that, because there's nothing more powerful than our growing capacity for observation. And when you're in nature, it's like we become much more sensitive to seeing that there's wisdom that comes from nature. And unlike human beings, we're so wrapped up in survival and trauma, and Joy can speak to this much more eloquently than myself, because that's his field of expertise. But my sense is, if we can, when we're feeling stressed out, go for a walk in nature, it brings forth a groundingness, and it helps to open the mind to have greater mental clarity, and to breathe again, and then listen to a divine inner knowingness that's guiding us, and a universe that seeks to express through us something we cannot understand intellectually, but one must experience. And events and experiences, particularly for your child and your wife, are so beautiful, because that's what unites families and builds character and strength and purpose, in always believing in ourselves, that we're more than we're conditioned to think we are. And in these particularly challenging times, there's so much opportunity to see that nature is not just the greatest teacher, but we need those beautiful trees to protect us, not just from forest fires, but we need them to protect us for shade, and for blessing us to be able to grow the food in Joey's backyard and my backyard, so that in balance, many of the plants need both shade and sun. And so for even myself at the campsite, I'm so happy I'm going to be able to tape outside, surrounded by the beautiful trees, rather than inside, where it was very, very hot. So again, shades are so important to our homes and to ourselves and to our camping journeys. So Joey, expand about your beautiful territory. You're living in Colorado, and Kim's living in Philadelphia, and I'm living in Canada, and we're all going through climate change. And for me, climate change is real. And when we see that nature, when we have heavy rains, as we're having out in Western Canada right now, or forest fires, humanity is awakening up to the fact that we are the greatest problem for Mother Earth, but we're also the solution to Mother Earth. As we begin to experience nature, we begin to get better at working with nature, not against her, but working together as one universal human family to discover we have gifts and passions and goals to be creative and to create together a better place for future generations, such as your 5-year-old daughter and my future grandchildren's grandchildren, so that we can leave the world a much better place. So as a 78-year-old grandmother, being able to see nature as a child, sit at a brook, listen to the brook, feel the moss under my feet of the natural floor of Mother Earth, see the trees or the walls and the sky is a beautiful roof of our one home. How are we in these times really beginning to listen to the voices of our Indigenous ancestors to see how relevant these programs are to connect us all to our hearts and to our growing capacity to work as one humanity? So Joy, maybe you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, Judith. I think what was coming to me from this conversation is almost that exactly what we're talking about, that connection to the divine and nature, and not knowing what's going to happen, but being willing to go with the flow. And like Kim said, find a lovely leg rest that initially was more of a cumbersome place to trip. And it really came down to perspective in the right moment to see like, oh, this is actually a wonderful spot here. And so I think we all have that superpower to kind of shift our perspectives when we come across something, that there's a million ways to see it. And I think often, at least in my view, or my upbringing, I think often brought me to the negative perspective. And so like, how do we kind of see these alternates and choose ones that benefit us most? And it seems that often once I have that question with my mind of, are there other ways to see this thing, that it usually comes down to that nature provides and it actually has a perfect function. And so I kind of feel it's a good analogy or relationship with emotional healing, that we kind of have the same thing inside of us in our body, is that we have these feelings that often we perceive that we don't like, and then we kind of deny them and control them because of this level of uncertainty and unwillingness to be with the flow of the experience of these signals inside of our body. And so I think it's kind of led to a cultural programming that we've become almost these brains that are just walking around through life, intellectually, logically talking to each other and maybe sharing some emotions sometimes. But we forget this connection to our body, to the earth, to the divine. And so I think that's kind of what on this whole conversation is analogous to, is that same thing as with our body. Like, how do we find these beautiful functions inside of us? How do we go with the flow of these unexplainable feelings that we have within us? And that oftentimes that is connection to the earlier parts of our lives and these earlier traumas we haven't recognized, and finding these things that that no longer serve us through these kind of automatic programs. But if we can kind of pause our life and allow ourselves to feel these things, what we gain out of that is the ability to choose, what perspective do we want? How did this difficulty from the past bring me to today, and actually give me a lot of tools and information to change my life in a positive aspect to go forward, instead of being victimized and stopped by these difficulties of the past. And I think nature can help us to do that action and be able to provide those beautiful things that we can gain from it. And what else is around that? Yeah, and like we were saying, Judith, about climate change, that's kind of, I think we have a lot of choice in that as well. Like you know, maybe the first initial reason why I wanted to grow a garden was to be able to have food for myself. But really what's come out of it too is now I get to choose the items that help to help the pollinators in the area. You never know how many pollinators are going to show up when, you know, an onion sprouts for the first time, and it has these flowers that just have so many different flowers on the end of them. And just seeing all these different types of pollinators that are around there. I get so many squash blossoms out of the squash that have either grown up by themselves or ones, little plants that I bought to be able to grow. Each day I can pull off tons of little squash blossoms and use that in my food. And for years I grew them without knowing I could do that. So it's like, as each thing happens each year, I try and learn about something new that's in the garden and find a new way to be able to use it. And so it's kind of like we have all these gifts around us and don't always know how to use them. And as time goes on, if we're willing, we can start to, you know, ask wisdom keepers about it that have been doing it for a long time and pass down. I think my grandma, actually, I sent her pictures of some of the flowers I grew. And she said something along the lines that like fruits and vegetables can help to feed your hunger, but flowers help to feed your soul. And I thought it was like so beautiful and so true. It's like flowers are those things. At first, for me, it's like there's no function. Yeah, they're beautiful. Maybe they help some pollinators, but for me, it's like, do I want to put money and water into that? I'd rather do that with food that I could eat. And then when she told me that, because I've been doing a little more flowers recently, I love dahlias, been growing some of those. And she said that, I was like, you're so right. Like, it is actually worth that water investment to put these flowers in, because it is something that feeds the soul and has this beauty to it that's unexplainable, but it creates that feeling inside of you, just like like it's just so pretty and helps me to relax in a way that I never thought about before. And so yes, I guess that's part of the climate change piece of wanting to grow specifically things that I know are good for the earth and good for me, and that helps to shift the environment, where instead of me putting water into my lawn and my grass that has some purpose but not really a purpose I enjoy, I let the weeds grow. I cut them with a lawnmower that is just a push lawnmower, and instead I divert my water to my garden. Because me, that's a better use of money and water, is to water something that's for flowers and plants and vegetables, versus grass that I wouldn't really use and will grow whenever it rains. So that's my perspective on that side. Kim, feel free to add in there.
Well, I think what's so powerful about like having a garden and even a flower, like that is a living entity, a living creation that you helped facilitate happen, you know, by planting the seed, taking the time to water it and tend to it, that you are creating something. You're co-creating with nature and with the divine. So it's I love that idea of feeling like we can come alongside the divine, rather than I guess expecting that it's all just going to happen without us. Like, we get to be a part of it. We get to be a part of the process and create that together, which I wish more of us would do that. You know, I do think that more and more people in the world are kind of waking up to the idea that we get to participate in what we're creating on Earth. I mean, we do it anyway. We are creating our experiences here on Earth, but more people are becoming aware of the fact that we are creating something. We are creating cause and effect as what's happening in the world. So if we could all do that.
And it goes back to becoming masters of our own soul's destiny, because we're creative and we're creators, and we forget that. And when we're little children, watch a child, how joyful they are. They just, like you said, your daughter's out in nature just playing and being real to herself. And I believe we all have a little child in us that would love to come out and play from time to time and to lighten up. And there's nothing more powerful than planting a seed and watching it grow. You nourish it, You don't run it over with a lawnmower. That was well said, Joey. You let the weeds come up. You let it be natural to itself. And that's where some of the greatest medicines will naturally come up, because the squirrels are great planters. And as you watch what squirrels do, they can plant trees and flowers everywhere. And if you look at the interdependence and interconnection of nature, you look at bumblebees and butterflies, how we are very, very conscious these days, how we need to protect that species. They're the very beginning of the food chain, and they're having some significant challenges right now because of the environment that human beings have been creating. And so these are times of truly waking up. To your grandmother's words, Joey, there's nothing more beautiful than a flower. And so sometimes those of us that have been blessed to be here a long time, we can see what nature was when we were young. So we have something to go by. The young people of today, you can't see sometimes that what we're doing is a form of insanity. It does not make sense because you have nothing to compare it to. So one of the things that I find delightful as we're awakening in these times is I believe that, be it COVID-19 or climate change, it's helping us to awaken to see there's this and there's that. And once we can see there's this and there's that, we can begin to make better choices to rise up and not play the role of victim, but be victors over a humanity that's awakening to each other, the best in ourselves, to become creators of the garden of life in all our backyards and on all our patios and wherever we live in our cities, to bring back beauty for others that may be on a path where they're really needing some help, to see some beauty. And a simple smile or a flower just handed to a person, you can light up their lives by a simple gesture of kindness. So when we look to the opening to the divine, I believe the divine is in all of our hearts, that we are an energy of love and light, and nature helps us to remember who we are. So Joey, when we talk about turning our pain into compassion and our compassion into action, and our action into the beingness of something, the becoming of something, would you say we're living in an era of great awakening, where we have young people like yourselves helping us to live through trauma, but begin to see that it's in the trauma that we become the gift of awakening to something better in ourselves and in each other? And we need facilitators like you young people, helping people through holistic coaching that Kim does, the wonderful therapy that you do, Joy, to help people feel their pain, and the ministry of listening deeply to each other that helps us to see that we're all called to simply keep plugging away, honoring and loving ourselves in new ways. So Joy, perhaps you could speak to that, and Kim, you can keep an eye on the time as we get prepared to get ready for next month, where the theme will be stay rooted. So Joey, could you speak to what it is you're doing that really speaks to what our conversation is today about opening to the divine?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think there's it's almost like our biggest pains are our greatest virtues, I guess is what's coming to me, that like our difficulties that we carry with us are actually a gateway into our inner power. And if we can begin to see these difficulties, these pains, these uncomfortable places that we carry with us as that platform to bring us to new versions of ourselves, then I think we can do a lot more work. And that's kind of the thing, is like, living's not easy, and being a human is not easy. It's very complex. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't require work, and that the work can't be pleasurable. I think it's kind of the opposite, that if we see these things as gifts, these difficulties that we carry around with us as a gift to be the transformation of this new person that we can be, then we constantly have an ability to see these things in this kind of value neutral way, where they're there, they are what they are, and it might take some work to move through them and work with them, but what comes through the other side each time I've done it for myself personally, as well as my clients, it seems like it's always worth it. And actually you get more value out of the product of that than the work you put into it. But while you're in it, sometimes that's the thing to remind ourselves of, like, this will be worth it. And so doing that, I think, is absolutely worth the process. And it's the same thing that you're bringing up, Judith, about like just watching a seed grow. You know, one of the best things I had as a child is my 5th and 6th grade teacher. She had us have a garden at the school. And so we all had a role in taking care of that and learning how things grew and how to protect it from pests and birds and all these different things. And you know, it's as simple as growing sprouts inside your house, right? Not everybody has access to be able to build a garden at their house. But for children, you can literally just do a little sprout piece and put the seeds down, water them for a couple days, and then take the water away. They're a little bit moist, and then put them by a windowsill. And day by day, you get to see these things start to open and to grow. And it teaches so many unknown things, I think, watching a plant grow, let alone taking care of a plant. And I think it's analogous to us in the same way that we have these things that we carry with us, these difficulties, these traumas from the past that keep coming up in our daily life, difficult relationships, thoughts that keep coming back, depression, anxiety, whatever it is. But if we allow ourselves to dive into that stuff and do the work to start to work with it and let it become part of us, then I think we get to watch that seed grow in the very same sense. And then we see the end result of that is this new life form that has come up, and to see that thing change throughout time. And I think it's the same thing that we can see for ourselves. We keep adding new branches and new sprouts and new leaves to who we are. We still are the same thing, but also we're almost not at the same time. And we keep going through and making these transitions. And so it's a beautiful thing. I love to walk through that process with people. And it really is a personal thing for me, because that's something that I love doing the most, is turning that mirror back on myself and looking into these aspects of who I am. And I think that's what it is like our perception of life and this body is just something that just has so much uncertainty, and we will never answer the questions as to what it is and all where it came from and all these other questions that we can have, because each time we answer something, we get more and more questions. And I think that is the beauty within itself, that we're going to have more questions, more answers, but more questions than answers. And to be open to be able to sit in that uncertainty is, I think, the beauty of life, and gives us this great connection that we are hungry for. And I want to help people to come into that, to learn to be okay with that uncertainty, to learn to find comfort in the discomfort, and to see that actually is a platform that gives us so much beauty and growth and increased connection with other people in our life as well at the same time, as well as to the divine. And so, yeah, I wanted to pass it off to Kim as well. Is there any other pieces that you wanted to share that you haven't been able to share so far in this conversation?
Yeah, I love the talk about sitting in the uncertainty, just being willing to sit there, just to be there, be with it. And for me, it reminds me of remembering to trust, like taking the time to trust, because trust is a decision. It can be a hard decision sometimes, but we can make the decision to have trust in any situation that's happening. And for me, it's about trusting the divine, trusting that all is well and all will be provided and all will be okay. And even if you're going through pain or emotional upset or trauma or whatever it might be, trusting that process, that you can go through that. You can ride it, you can feel it, you can experience it, and then it can be let go, it can be released. And you can just go with the flow in that process. And I love that. You know, I did a course at the beginning of COVID, I think it was, which I called the Trust Transformation course, because I like alliteration, right? TNT. So it was all about guiding people to go through this process of learning how to trust their souls, how to trust wisdom and guidance from the divine, and coming to a place where they didn't have to live in fear all the time. They didn't have to know the answer of what's going to happen or not happen, because no matter what happens, you can trust that there's a next step, and that whatever step comes, whether it's a hard step or a happy step, is meant for us to go through for a reason. So I love that. I love how you were just going into that piece of being with the body, releasing that feeling and expressing the emotions. And that's okay. It's okay to do that, and it's healthy to do that. So that's what came up. I feel like there was some other thoughts, but they're not popping they're not popping into my head at the moment.
No worries. That was beautiful. Let me fill that in, because I think you're hitting a very important point about the trust, like having some sense of trust, belief, surrendering to the experience. It's like, it's almost like two sides of the same coin, where like, because we have evolved to be so logical and smart, we've gained a lot of progress as a society. But at the same time, it's this constraint where it stops us from being able to just be in the unknown, because we believe we have to categorize everything and lay everything out and plan for all these things. Like, that has power, but it stops us from being able to find ease in the uncertainty. And I think that's where we find a lot of beauty, is even if we don't know, if we can allow ourselves to kind of sit back and be with it. The alternative is we're going to be stressed and unhappy and uncomfortable because we can't know what's going to happen. But if we can trust and believe in what's going on, then we can sit and be with it and flow with the water instead. So I'm so glad you said that, Kim. That's kind of pivotal to this whole thing of where we're going.
Yeah, and it reminds me of, trust is a very important word, because if we don't trust that all is for my highest good, if we don't get to that point of being authentic with my own pain, right? And when we're being authentic, we're being real. So when we talk about being able to emote, being emotionally engaged with the reality of the moment, and to truly honor that we're grieving something, to emote tears, what we do too is we give the other person permission to feel. We don't even know we're being teachers in that moment of helping people to reclaim the natural capacity to grieve. And in our culture, what we do is we block people with an intellectual conditioning that says you shouldn't feel, you shouldn't emote, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, or you should be this, you should be that. We need to get that word should out of the vocabulary of Anglophones and use the words, could you actually see that in every moment of your life, when you talk to a person, they're your greatest teacher, to ask yourself, what is your new lesson for yourself that you're learning about yourself that you didn't know? That person is being a blessing to mirror back to you, something you could not see, but you can see it in them. And once you can see something in another person, be it darkness or light, be it this or that, be it yin or yang, all life is polarity. So when we see something, people are the mirror to us to help us see something in ourselves. And when we can be completely authentic and real to our experiences and our events in life, and to trust that the universe is helping us to see something differently, or something we couldn't see yesterday that today resonates as a new truth, then despite all the labor of pain and the process of rebirth, we will begin to see that we are the ones we've been waiting for, because we're the ones that are mirrors to each other, to see that this is a university of life. It's a school of life. And let's lighten up and be like children. We don't have to have our degrees from here to yin yang. We simply have to have our hearts and minds open to recognize that in every new day is an opportunity to learn something magnificent about each other. And that the goodness in each other, despite the pain and trauma, is wanting to come through now. Like the dam in a river that the beavers make, they make it to help nature. like the dams that human beings make, they help it to make money to create electricity. At some point, we must begin to see as human beers, like bees, we have to be present to what we're doing. Does it make good sense? And be in the moment. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to yell. It's okay to scream. It's okay to drum and bring forth your emotions in a good way, because it can bring a positive energy to the darkness on the world right now as more people begin to sing and dance and celebrate. We're beginning to understand we're beautiful souls. And you're right, Joey, it's hard to be human. But by gum, isn't it wonderful that we have this experience to recognize in each other the beautiful light and love that exists in us all. So this opening to that divine energy in new ways, I believe, is happening all over the planet as we awaken in each new day to the possibilities of staying grounded and rooted to truly become the sacred tree of life. And all the ancient mystics from all major traditions have been talking about that for years. The cosmic order, the sacred tree of life, to become the fruit of the tree of knowledge and wisdom, to truly remember we're all here as children of a beautiful energy that seeks to express through us. So I just want to thank you folks again for this wonderful time to chat and share from our hearts, and to remind viewers that are listening to do the same in their own families and their own backyards, and go get connected to nature. Take a walk when you're feeling traumatized. Call out to a special friend and share with your heart what's really important for you, and help their hearts to open as well. So Kim, would you like to bring this to a closing today and let us know about being centered next month and rooted? And I believe the call is coming again on, I believe it's 19 that we scheduled on September the 19th, and it's about staying centered. So Kim, I'll leave it to you. And again, thanks so much, seeing you, Joey. And Joey will be putting this up for people to watch on the website in coming months. And again, thanks so much, Joy, for all the work you're doing with the technological end, and you, Kim, as well. So Kim, can you help us bring this wonderful gathering to a close for now?
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure to hear your stories and Joey's stories, and to be together in community in this space. And my wish for everyone who's listening live, who's going to listen to the recording, is to really, really take the time to actually open to the divine. And it can be as simple as you go outside, wherever you are. If you don't have grass near you, like, go drive a little bit and find some grass, put your feet in the grass and breathe, and find any way that you can connect to yourself, to your soul, to the divine, and allow that to lead you through the rest of this month before we get to next month. See what messages you receive, see what pops up for you, and just be open. Be open to receiving from the divine. You can't hear the messages from the divine or see the experiences if you're not open to it. So just open yourself up for that. Take a deep breath. We can all breathe together to end. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And we will see you next time. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Sacred blessings.
Love to y'all. Thank you. See you next time.